Hi guys, this is CK at CK Education. Today I want to talk about something that I think is pretty profound, but we don't really stop to think about this. And I think one of the big problems in just everyday life is that we hear things, we hear certain words, we have certain catchphrases, certain buzzwords, certain cliches that we hear, and we just sort of repeat them without really thinking about it. Today I want to talk about wasting your time. And we hear this a lot, right? Don't waste your time. Stop wasting your time. Um, but if you think of it, what do people mean when you're wasting your time? A lot of times, doesn't it mean that you're not being productive? Like if you're wasting your time, um, but then you do something that's quote productive, people think that you're making good use of your time. And some people carry this too far. So every day they try to do something that's just productive, whatever that means. Okay. Usually, I mean, being productive means you're getting something done. You're achieving something. There's an outcome and you take action to produce that outcome. And in the process of producing that outcome, whatever time that is spent doing that thing to reach that outcome, we usually consider that a good use of time if the outcome is desirable, right? And so we think of that as being productive and making good use of your time. But on the other hand, if you're not doing that and you're not doing something to achieve a desirable goal, then that's usually considered a waste of time. But I want us to rethink this a little bit. Isn't wasting time not just not being productive? Isn't wasting our time more a matter of whether what we are doing is meaningful? I mean, let's say that we are accomplishing a desired output. And as we do that thing, we think that we are making good use of our time because we invest the time and then something happens. There's an outcome, there's a result. There's a product or there's a tangible thing that we could point to and say, yeah, I did all this for this. But what if in doing that, we get the outcome, but it's actually not very meaningful? Then do we really make good use of our time? I've been thinking a lot these days about, isn't a waste of time more about doing things that are not meaningful, rather than using the metric of productivity or producing outcomes to determine if something is a waste of time or not? And I'm coming to the realization that no, it's more about significance, it's more about meaning. If we're doing something that is very meaningful to us, sometimes it's subjective. Yeah, it could be something meaningful to me, maybe not meaningful to you, right? But sometimes it's objective. Sometimes it's just, we might think it's meaningful, but really it isn't. And I think we have to be very careful about how we define meaning in our lives. Because somebody could say, well, I'm doing a lot of work and I put in a lot of time and I have this desirable output, this thing, and I made a lot of money and it's desirable. I like it. It was meaningful to me. And when they say meaningful, sometimes they mean it was worth it. But just because something is worth it, again, doesn't necessarily mean it's meaningful. And so I think we have to be very careful about this, because now, why is this important? I think it's important because how we think about meaning in our lives and how we think about whether we are wasting our lives, wasting our days, wasting our hours, our minutes, is so important, because it'll dictate what we do. It'll dictate the priorities in our life. I'm not here to try to define for you what meaning is. I have my own definitions of that. And it is linked to what we do in our relationship with God. I think that is ultimate meaning. But I'm not here to define that for you. As always, in the videos, I just share my thoughts. You can agree or not agree. That's okay. Of course, that's okay. But I just want to encourage you to think about that. The things that we do just because you're doing something and just because you're doing something and getting stuff done, does that necessarily mean you're not wasting your time? Could it be that you're actually wasting time even if you're getting something done because you're not, the thing that you're doing is actually not very meaningful? And if that's the case, is it worth putting in all that time and energy and whatever you're putting into it? Now, sometimes we have to do it, but I think that if you can find a way to find meaning in all the things you do, imagine that. What if whatever you do, even if you say, well, all I'm doing is just I'm washing the dishes, and there is an outcome. The dishes are clean, right? I mean, there's an outcome to that. So was that a waste of time? I think it could be, or I think it could be very meaningful, depending on what kind of heart you do it with, what kind of motivation, what kind of intent. And it depends. And I think that we can find meaning in everything we do. But so I don't think it's dependent on the actual task. But I'm just saying, do you find meaning in everything you do? And I think if you can, it's a wonderful thing in life. And so I would encourage you to just rethink this thing that we say, this phrase that we use, waste of time. And hope you think about it, because I've been thinking about that and for a long time, and I just thought I'd share that with you. I'll catch you in my next video.